Welcome in, everybody, to this special edition of the Rebel Report podcast. My name is Michael Borky. Glad that you are here. We will do the live stream tonight as usual. Keys to the game, all that good stuff, picks and whatnot coming your way later tonight. But I did want to bring you an extra edition because we caught up on the radio show with Jon Hale. He covers Kentucky for the Lexington Herald-Leader. Really good conversation with Jon about how much can we take away from last year's game? What did we learn about Kentucky last weekend when they struggled for 4 quarters with Toledo and more? So a really good conversation from him. So stick around for that. I first want to invite you, though, to like the channel or like the video, subscribe to the channel, I should say, leave a comment as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast feed wherever you get them. Just search Rebel Report and subscribe and leave a rating and a review. And this edition of the podcast is brought to you in part by Toyota of Brookhaven. Exit 40 in Brookhaven is where they're located, but you can shop anywhere at toyotaofbrookhaven.com. Go with somebody. If you have to buy a new car, whether it's for you, maybe your husband or your wife, or you've got a new teen driver, it is not always a fun experience. And they know that there at Toyota Brookhaven. They will take care of you. They'll build a relationship with you and treat you like a person. Trust me, I've been there and I know how those people operate, and they will take care of you at Toyota of Brookhaven. They also, if you live in the area, have a service department, one of the highest rated in the state, open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But they'll give you $1,000 off on me, by the way, if you just tell them that it was me that sent you there and this podcast that brought you there. $1,000 off any in-stock new Toyota if you just tell them that I sent you. Great in-house financing and awesome used selection as well. Check them out, toyotaofbrookhaven.com. All right, here's my conversation with Jon Hale, who again covers Kentucky for the Lexington Herald-Leader. Your Ole Miss opponent preview, Kentucky edition. Here that is right now. How much did we learn? How much did you learn about Kentucky in their game, their win over Toledo?
Not sure I learned a whole lot. I learned a little because there were so many uncertainties about this team, with more than half the scholarship players are new to the roster between the transfer class and the freshmen coming in. So we just didn't know a lot going into it. Toledo's not a bad team. Picked to win the MAC preseason. Obviously beat Mississippi State last year on the road, beat Pitt in the bowl game, had a lot back from that team. So it was not your typical week one kind of mid-major conference pushover. That being said, Kentucky, there were good things and there were plenty of bad things too. The run game looked okay. The offensive line looked improved. The defense played really well for the first 3.5 quarters. The passing game was terrible. I don't think the passing game is quite as bad as it was last week, but maybe the defense is not quite as good as it looked either. So I think until we see them play some SEC competition, there's still a lot of questions about this team.
Lane Kiffin was asked this week about if you can look back to previous times he's played Zach Calzada in particular, because Calzada, obviously with A&M, did play Ole Miss. And can you take anything away from that? And his answer is basically no, because new systems can create new players. What can an Ole Miss fan expect to see from Zach Calzada after having watched him before under Jimbo Fisher?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think Kentucky fans are asking the same question this week. He was, not a perfect quarterback at A&M the year he played there, came off the bench and then replaced Haynes King when he got injured in 2021. They beat number 1 Alabama that year. But he was in a position when King was healthy, he was not going to start anymore, so he transferred to Auburn. Didn't play at Auburn for a year, had a shoulder injury that contributed to that. Ended up at FCS Incarnate Word for 2 years and put up kind of video game numbers, but they were running a kind of spread offense against FCS competition, so I don't think we can read a lot into that. That's not what Kentucky does, even when the offense is working well. The best case scenario, I think, for Zach Calzada, and he said it a few times preseason, is he wants to be kind of that game manager quarterback where he has the arm strength to make plays down the field, but to be patient and not force those throws when they're not there, and then otherwise just kind of stay ahead of the change. That's what Kentucky wants to do. They want to run the ball. They want to, make big plays off play action. The problem was in that first game, they couldn't connect on any of those deep throws. They had one in the first drive that looked like it was a catch down the sideline that got overturned by replay, but other than that, 2 pass interferences were the only thing they had to show from that, and they threw for 85 yards. So he made bad decisions. You would hope that as a 7th-year quarterback, the thing you can count on is to make the right decision in most instances, and that didn't happen in week one. How much of that was nerves? How much of that was being amped up for being back in the SEC? I think that's the big question this week.
We're going to talk later about how much you can take away from last year's game. I mean, Ole Miss and Kentucky have played a series of really close games each of the last 4 times they've played. How different is this Kentucky team personnel-wise than the one that came to Oxford and won last year?
Very different from that team, especially on offense. I mean, basically, they have 3 starters back on offense. The center, Jagger Burton, played left guard last year, so he's in a new position, even though he's a returning starter. So really they have their right guard and their tight end back. The tight end, Josh Caddis, is the guy who recovered the fumble in the end zone for the game-winning score last year. So, that's at least one guy who was a big part of that game. But, obviously the huge fourth down play to Barry on Brown. Barry on Brown plays for LSU now. Brock Vandergrift, the quarterback, retired. He's not there anymore. The running game is completely rebuilt. They have Dante Dowdell, who's a transfer from Nebraska, Mississippi guy, who ran for 100 yards last week. And then Seth McGowan, former Oklahoma running back from back in the day, who spent last season at New Mexico State, kind of a 2-headed rushing attack that, the offense looks very, very different with the same coordinator, the same style, but the personnel is almost completely different. Defense, they have some more guys back, but still a lot of change, especially up front. The one thing they were able to do against Toledo that we didn't see a whole lot last year is they got a fair amount of pressure without having to bring extra blitzers. We'll see if that holds up against SEC competition. Maybe that'll be a plus for them. But the scheme is the same. Both coordinators still there. They're going to try and do the same stuff that Kentucky does, but the personnel is very different.
So you mentioned it, especially on the defensive line. Ole Miss had real trouble with Kentucky's defensive front. A lot of those players gone, as you mentioned. One in particular off to the NFL that was a big thorn in Ole Miss's side last year. Are they as good up front on defense as they were a year ago?
They're different, and so it's so hard to judge Kentucky for that question, because when I was in Oxford last year and I was leaving and in the elevator walking to my car with somebody, we were sitting there thinking like, oh well, the schedule really sets up that they had Vanderbilt and Auburn and Florida the next 3 games after a bye week, and none of those teams looked great at the moment. You thought, wow, if they can sweep that, they're going to be in the playoff discussion when Tennessee comes to town in late October, November, and then they lost all 3 of those games and were kind of an abject disaster in the second half. So you mentioned the defensive line there. Deion Walker, who ended up being like a 4th-round pick, was projected as a first-rounder coming into the year, looked good against Ole Miss, but was really never the same player after that again. So that's a long way to say that I think the defensive line for Kentucky right now is better than it was for most of last season. Whether it's better than it was in that Ole Miss game, that's I think a fair question at this point. They're different for sure. They're not quite as big, but maybe they have some more athletic guys. One of them, though, McQueese Humphrey Grace, the defensive end they signed from South Dakota as a transfer, is supposed to be a big part of that pass rush, had an ankle injury last week, and so we'll see what his availability is when the injury report comes out tonight.
Is Mark Stoops honest on those reports, or do they do a little gamesmanship the way that Lane Kiffin sometimes does?
I think for the most part, I can't think of a scenario last year where it was, just an abject lie. There were always guys who showed up on Wednesday as, questionable or probable or whatever, who dropped off by the end of the week. But when in the real actual injury scenarios, they were pretty upfront. I think maybe only once all season did they try to do the game time decision tag on anybody. By game day, it was pretty clear who was there. The one thing that did happen occasionally is guys we did not know were injured at all, who weren't hurt in the last game and weren't on the Wednesday report, would suddenly pop up on Friday. Out of the blue, but I guess theoretically, if you want to be generous, you could say that maybe they got hurt in practice those 2 days.
You mentioned coordinators the same, so scheme not changing. I mean, it feels very simple. Kentucky's going to try to slow this game down and limit possessions because the contrasting styles with how these offenses want to operate and how quickly they want to score is apparent. And, I mean, just like a year ago, especially on their home field, it feels like Kentucky's just going to try to make this game move as fast as possible, but as slow, it'll look as slow as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously the problem with that strategy is, Ole Miss can score as quickly as any team in the country other than maybe Tennessee. And so, they don't need 3 or 4 minute drives to go out there and put up a bunch of points. So there's just really no scenario that Kentucky's competitive in this game. If it's played in the 30s or higher, it's got to be in the 20s, and after last week, there's probably real questions about whether Kentucky can even score 20. But that was enough against Ole Miss last year. Maybe that worked. So we know that in those first 4 games before they played last year, Ole Miss, I think, it scored 40 in every game, and then went out and got kind of shut down by Kentucky. So I don't know that either result from week one for these two teams tells us a whole lot, but we're going to find out if Kentucky's defense is good or not against this opponent for sure.
If Ole Miss can protect Austin Simmons, he's got a pretty could be high level to elite complement of weapons. What do you think about Kentucky's secondary and their ability to cover in this game? Who would be somebody that an Ole Miss fan needs to watch out for covering Trey Wallace or DeJon Stribling in this game?
It is supposed to be a strength of this team. They do feel really good about their two corners, maybe their top three corners, J.Q. Hardaway, DJ Waller, who's a former Michigan transfer, and Ryan Nichols, three guys that they think have really high-level potential, and they did not add – safety was the only position they didn't add a transfer this offseason, which tells you they feel good about those two guys. But their starting safeties, frankly, didn't play very well last year and had a few mistakes in the opener, too, so that was kind of a head-scratcher. Mark Stoops will tell you he thinks the secondary's, one of the strengths of this team, but, we have not seen it play out that way always, so it's going to be an interesting test for those guys for sure.
Got less than a minute. What kind of environment do you think Ole Miss is walking into in this game?
It'll be interesting to see because, there are a lot of Kentucky fans who want change and are just convinced they're going to be terrible this year after the way last season ended and are not very happy at this point. But I do think for big games, especially early in the season, last week wasn't great, but they won. There will be plenty of people here excited and rooting for it. It's just the first sign of adversity. That's when you really have to wonder, what's going to happen with the team? How's the crowd going to respond? It's not sold out yet. I'm sure there will be plenty of Ole Miss fans here because it's not a trip they get to make very often. But the support will be fine to start the game. It's just a matter of if things go badly in that first.
Really appreciate Jon for his time. And the podcast is brought to you in part by Advantage Business Systems. Check them out online, absms.com. If you're a Mississippi business or you need office technology, anything office technology related, and you're in this state, absms.com is the website. Tell them I sent you. You'll get a complimentary office technology assessment, absms.com for all of your Mississippi office technology needs. Also, Priority One Bank. They make you their priority every day with their online banking platform. It's a one-stop shop. All you need is an internet connection. You do whatever it is that you need to do with your money. Local loan servicing and decision-making, they will treat you like a priority. It's in the name at Priority One Bank. Did Jon say anything that changed your mind about this game at all? That's what I want to hear from you guys. We'll talk about it more tonight as well on the live stream. Hope to see you there. 9 o'clock on Thursday night. Keys to the game, picks, all that good stuff. We will do that coming up tonight. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you guys enjoyed the opponent preview, and I'll talk to you on the live stream tonight. I'll see you then.